What's up? Saturation, isolation, and compression. Why does anybody, all the stupid stuff that humanity takes for granted? Like I'm the first person in the world to figure out how magnetism actually works. Oh, I really am, and I've got a nice, really, really, really popular book on it. All the stuff that we think we take for granted. Well, why do you use a flash in photography? I don't know, to like add light to a backlit situation, and why do you do that? Well, stuff needs light, especially when you shoot in the dark. What? No, why do you really need a flash? Why do you really? Well, we gotta light those shadows. We gotta give stuff definition. Okay, definition, that's a good one. Saturation, isolation, and dynamic range compression. What really are the key principles? We think we need flash to add light, and of course we do, You got you got a backlit person, you need to add some light, otherwise you're going to end up with a shadow figure in your picture. That's kind of the obvious, but do you or really anybody else know why the hell you use a flash other than, well, we use a flash to add light? Well, that's a nice description. How about an explanation of why you actually really need a speed light or studio strobe? What does it actually do? Why do all those studio portraits look so awesome? Well, we got total lighting control there. Oh, there you go. You scratched right upon it, but you didn't actually nail it. Oh, what about using that outdoors? Why? What's the huge? So you got the best camera in the world and the best lens that money can buy, even for micro contrast. Yeah. Okay. Why would you add lighting in like a brightly lit situation? I don't know. If my subject is lit, my background is lit, why would I do that? Everything in professional photography is an expertise in composition and light manipulation. Saturation, subject isolation, and dynamic range compression. What do we mean by compression? It means that your camera has only got so many stops of dynamic range. And even if you are shooting out an evenly lit situation, the sun's beating down on your subject in the background, it's like, well, that's good enough. Everything's perfectly lit. I'm going to take a picture of this hot chick standing on the railing of this bridge. And why would you still use flash for that? Because that means it gives me complete control to set, to demure the background, or raise. It depends on what you want to do. Dynamic range compression. You expose for your background, you raise for your subject. When you have total control over the lighting, even if everything is perfectly lit, you're not shooting a backlit situation. It's like, well, I don't need a flash here. Everything's perfectly front, illuminated from behind my shoulder. I can go ahead and shoot. Yeah, but do you know what looks better than that? It's like, well, the picture turned out really good. It's like, yeah, let's make it turn out even better. Let's drop the ambient, or the background, like about 2.5 stops, where everything looks nice and muted. And then, not only will we isolate the subject by giving it some fill flash, this is where TTL is useless bullshit. People are like, I need TTL. Like, no you don't. Turn that damn flash on. Your subject's about 10 feet away, 1/16th power. Stick a diffuser on the front of it and pop it off on the old gal that you're taking a picture of, right? Oh my god, it looks so much better. You're right. What did you do? Well, I took a reading of my scene. I dropped it 2 stops. I'm in manual mode. Okay, I took a reading. I don't even need a light meter for this. I mean, if you want to, all those people out there that are too lazy or too stupid to know how to use a light meter, and light meter is not hard to learn how to use. It's like I took a reading. I took a matrix reading of what is. I dropped it into manual. I dropped everything by 2 stops to demure my background. And then I dropped in a 16th or a quarter power, depending on distance, obviously. And I gave saturation, isolation, and I made that picture pop like a mother. You see, this is where things look radically different between Snapchat. If you have the most expensive full-frame camera, the most expensive Zeiss glass that money can buy, it's like, well, if I take this picture and I pose her perfectly, pose for me, girl. You take a picture, You're like, it still kind of looks like a professional snapshot. What's the difference? The difference is lighting, bitch! It's about lighting! Lighting! Saturation. It doesn't matter if you've exposed both your ambient and your background perfectly. You have a limited amount of time to drop serious saturation and definition upon your subject. We're not even talking about changing the values between the diffuse or midtones and the speculars and the shadows, or giving definition at different angles, which of course is incredibly important, which mimics the golden hour, early morning, early evening, that gives a definition to the person's face and adds to the compositional value of the shot. Because when you're a slave to the sun, then all you're doing is making professional snapshots. Does this work much of the time? It sure does. There is no perfectly a cloudless sky and, it's 3 p.m. and you got tons and tons of light. Every photograph can be improved under perfect lighting conditions like that with more lighting and diffusion. Okay, diffuse the face, change the saturation levels of your subject by adding some fill flash. And it's like, wow, this picture is taken the exact same time of day. One is just taken with ambient light. It's like, what's the difference? Well, you see, what's the difference is that I isolated my subject from the background by taking a reading, putting it in a manual, dropping my exposure by 2 to 3 stops, or even a full stop. It depends on what you want, what you need. Stop, 2, 3 stops. Dropping some fill flash on my subject, what that does, it not only, obviously, by dropping a stop to 3 stops in the background, change the nature of the background, but by adding some saturation fill flash to my subject, it gives me separation and true perceptual depth in the photograph. And then it ain't no more looking like a snapshot, because all those shots are like, I got the best camera in the world and the best lens, and it's a cloudless, sunny day, and man, everything's perfectly even lit. I just nailed it. My subject's perfectly lit, and so is my background. I'm shooting f2, f2.8, f1.8. Got great bokeh. You know what looks even better? That's a good shot. I really like that shot. But you know what would be even better? What? Stick it in manual mode. Okay. Drop it 2 stops on your shutter speed. Okay, I'm gonna go from 60th to 500th of a second, or whatever your maximum sync speed is. This is where high-speed sync becomes important, of course. And expose. Notice the difference between saturation and the isolation of the subject. Now it's gone from this to this. And the saturation really pops on the subject. It's like, wow, I can't even do this in Lightroom. It's like, yeah, all you had to do was take an exposure, even if you don't have a light meter, drop it 2 stops, depending on what you want compositionally, raise your subject illumination. What that does is it gives it saturation, isolation, and you've compressed the dynamic range within the value of the composition that you want, that you actually have in your head. The most important thing in photography is that people need to stop seeing their pictures through their viewfinder. There is a feature on this Fuji camera that lets you preview the exposure. It's WYSIWYG. I never use it. It is a distraction. And it can't tell me. It can never tell me what I can get with this flash. I always have it turned off on all my Fujis. I hate it. You don't have that in any optical viewfinder for obvious reasons. I absolutely don't want it in any mirrorless camera. That's the first thing I do on every Fuji is I turn that crap off. I don't want to preview the exposure. I can see the exposure in my brain. If you need the camera to tell you what something's going to look like, and it will only tell you via the camera, shutter speed and aperture, it will never tell you what the hell it looks like. If you got any speed light at all on your Fuji, and it's never going to preview that. It can't. There's no way it could tell you. So it's totally useless for that. But it's like a stupid feature. You know how you used to have a perfectly lined and ruled paper for like school children, and that way it'd keep your writing within certain parameters. That's all it does. I never want to see that in my camera. Never. I can see it in my head. I don't need to see it in the camera. All that is distracting bullshit. Everything starts right here, and then it gets translated from here through your hands into the camera. If you're relying on your camera to, my camera's got this neat feature on the Fuji, it lets me preview my exposure. Yeah, those are like training wheels on your bicycle. Yeah, those are training. Yeah, every professional I know, they turn that feature off because it's bullshit. It's a bullshit feature. Some people love it, and the people that do love it shouldn't love it. They should be trying to get out of that. So, saturation, isolation, and compression. And if you think that a speed light or a studio strobe is about giving illumination to like a backlit, no, that's really a description. That ain't what's going on. You have to know what a speed light is actually doing or a studio strobe is actually doing to your subject. Total lighting control. It's not about illumination. Of course, everything's about illumination. It is about the way that subject is rendered. Where the speculars are diffuse and the shadows fall, it's about the saturation. It's about the ability to control your ambient. It's like, well, if I drop everything 2 stops, without a speed light, you're screwed. You drop everything 2 stops, you're screwed. Your subject is blacked out. But with a speed light, that lets me control my ambience. You know, it's so important to be able to do that. That's why the leaf shutter on that X100T is pure silk, sex, and sugar. It is like, oh yeah. Ask why every professional photographer that has even any half love for Fuji is like, what camera do you? I own an X100T or X100. It's that leaf shutter. It lets you destroy the ambient lighting. And then you can pop in a flash at any sync speed. Leaf shutter, oh my god, that is just like a photographic orgasm. Anyway, I hope I gave you some hints on what lighting really is as opposed to what the hell you think it is, because it's not about, I'm going to add some light because my subject's dark. That's not really the reason. Okay,